Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and right now I am joined by my close associate, Sean McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Gordon Brown and Gillian Duffy of the Terrace get together. That's right, you are going to be confronted with some uncomfortable questions about lower league Scottish football, and then you're going to get insulted when the other person thinks their microphone is switched off.
Well, is Gillian Duffy that bigot?
Bigoted old woman, yes. You know what's really funny? See, when the BBC went back and interviewed her and said, "By the way, do you hear what Gordon Brown's just been saying about you?" The look on her face.
Well, a bunch of grasses.
Could you imagine going back to Gordon Brown and just saying, "By the way, Gillian Duffy's just heard what you've said about her," and I'm sure Gordon Brown's the face is just, "Oh no, your soul must have sunk. Your soul must have sunk." And then he had to go back and apologise to her profoundly.
In fairness, it feels like every day something worse is said in politics, but nobody really minds. But certainly at that point, calling a bigot carried weight.
I think though, I mean, I'm saying it if I'm correct. I am correct because I've gone back and read this. That's how I spend my time. Listen, I spend reading about like infamous people. Gillian Duffy, unfortunately, has entered the realm of infamous people. I think she had confronted Gordon Brown in Rochdale in 2010. And I think that she had been a lifelong Labour supporter, like proud socialist, believed in the NHS, etc. But she was uncomfortable with the levels of immigration in Rochdale, and so posed him a particularly testing question. And then obviously Brown said what he said. And I think that later on, Gillian Duffy, and might need to correct me if I'm wrong, Gillian Duffy, if you are listening, this is your right of reply, that she had pretty much pivoted sort of further to the right. After that, yeah, sort of into beyond the Conservatives. That's how far right it is.
Was it Polish people that she seemed to have some kind of issue with at that moment in time?
It could have been. It could have been. If you can't speak the Kings or the Queens at that period, then she didn't want to know.
Well, there you go.
Well, there you go. So, Sean, who's Gordon Brown? Who's Gillian Duffy between us? We'll leave it for the listener to decide. Sean and I are going to be taking a patented 3-game roundup of the weekend's action. We'll be looking at one game in the Championship, another in League One, and a final fixture from League Two. And hopefully, we might be able to squeeze in one or two laughs along the way.
Literally one or two.
Yes, it's either or. You might get one, you might get two. You ain't getting anything. There's definitely not going to be no laughs, but there isn't going to be more than two. That's the choice that you're going to get. I want to start with our disclaimer. This 3-game podcast is patented. You must report it if you know anyone else using it. No one likes a grass, we all know that, but no one likes to also see their intellectual property being stolen. So, on top of that, this podcast is also sponsored by Green King. If you head down to your local Green King, you'll find them in most places. If you say the code Terrace15 when you place your order, you get 15% off your dinner. So, big thanks to them for their continued support of the podcast.
Have you made that up, or is that a true thing?
Very much made that up.
I thought I'd missed something in the group chat.
Yeah,
I'm sure they stopped sponsoring us ages ago because of some kind of jingle.
Because of you.
I don't think it was because of me. But they weren't happy with a jingle in general.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get them back on side by giving them free advertising. So I just hope that no one listens to this and goes to the barman and say Terrace 15 and winks at him, and the guy's just got no clue, and their bill comes at full price.
That doesn't sound like Green King. That doesn't sound like it's going to get Green King more on side. Sounds going to annoy them further.
It could well do, but listen, we'll see how we get on. We'll leave the Green King sponsorship over the festive period. I know that's when a lot of people are taking time out. So if Green King do see a spike in their the footfall and their visitorship and their overall profits, then tell them Craig and Sean sent you. Wink. Sean, as well, I normally kick off these podcasts by asking how you're doing. I think it's always important to check in with your mates, but there was a very nasty, very upsetting comment that was left on Twitter by someone called Josh Thompson, who's a Dundee United fan. There's a surprise. And after last week's show was posted, he replied to a tweet from the Terrace account saying, 9:22 if you want to skip the boring shit at the start. Now, Josh Thompson, he might not like checking in on his mates. Doesn't sound like Josh Thompson has any mates in the first place. But I do, and Sean, I want to find out, how the devil are you? How are you getting on?
Listen, as ever, I am very well. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Just we're recording this on the Wednesday. It's a big Christmas lunch tomorrow, so I'm very much looking forward to it. Very much.
What are you doing for it?
We're going to. Well, I don't want to give the game away. I don't want people to come in real life and hunt me
talk
down.
to you.
Yeah, so it's in Glasgow. I'll say that. It's a sort of a well-known food drinkery in Glasgow.
So literally the entire company that you work for is going out for lunch, and then what, you go back to work, or is that you out all day?
No, very much so. It's in the afternoon. I think we were booked out for, well, certainly the duration. And then, I mean, I'm expecting this to go well into the evening. I'm bracing myself for it to go well into the evening. I'm looking forward. There's a good chance to blow off steam with some friends and associates. That's the way I'm pitching it.
Do you have steam to blow off?
Oh man, very much so, Sean. I'm like a little steam whistle. I just need somebody to pull my chain. And I think by having one small sip of Tennant's lager with friends and associates, that's going to be enough to send me off into the stratosphere.
You sound like an old toilet. You need somebody to pull your chain.
I'm not. I'm a steam whistle. Whoo! That's what I'm like. I'm just warning people that their shift is finished. My shift will have finished by the time I suck back in that first delicious pint of Tennant's. Have you had your Christmas? Did you miss your Christmas night out?
My Christmas night out was last week, and it was on the evening that we recorded a podcast, and I just thought Thursday was a weird night for a Christmas night, so I didn't go. I wasn't that fussed for it.
Well, that you're missing out on your Christmas party certainly benefited me and benefited all the other 15 people or so that listen to the Lower League podcast. So
apart from Josh, or whatever his name was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I didn't see any comments that he left after those 9:22 minutes. He just called the first part when we catch up with each other boring shit. So who knows if he enjoyed us talking about Raith Rovers and Stennismuir. I'm going to assume that if the stuff when we're not talking about football is boring, everything afterwards is then not boring. So then he must have enjoyed the rest of it. Then I'm going to assume.
Not necessarily.
Well, Josh, if you are listening, skip to about the 7-minute mark, because that's when Sean and I are going to actually get into the football and actually talk about it. And Sean, we're going to start with the Championship. And normally, it's crazy to think that we saw one of the best games of football all season on Friday night when Raith Rovers took in Partick Thistle. We're not going to be discussing that. But that's that. But I mean, just quickly, what were your thoughts on that game?
There was a point, see when Raith went 4-3 up, and I was going Raj, and I sat down, and I could actually feel, it felt like my heart was going to burst out my chest, and I cannot imagine that it's good for my health. There is a well-known comedy trope that I am not getting any younger, and Raith must find a way of winning games more comfortably because I cannot take this much longer.
I thought you were going to say the well-known comedy trope, laughter is the best medicine. But not in your case here. Not in your case here. Raith Rovers are literally going to kill you.
Well, I hope not. But yes, it was. I mean, I thought the first half was decent. Like, the first half was absolutely fine. I thought Raith were in control. When they went 2-0 up, I thought that there was a part of me that thought, right, we might go on to win this quite comfortably. But there is just this kind of 15 to 20 minute spell, which might derail Raith's kind of hopes this season. We'll see how it goes. Certainly, the start to the second half, Raith Rovers very rarely do it as much as this ends to a game is what they're becoming synonymous for this season. The start to the second half is derailing them week in, week out, and that's why they have to win games late on. But I mean, regardless, it was just a brilliant 90 minutes of football. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. At 3-2, I was like, right, I'm just going home. I'm just going home after this. Going a little bit back at 12, burst, vaguely remember getting in. But most Raith Rovers games are now like that every single week. It's class.
It's amazing, man. And sticking with like nasty Dundee United fans, midway through the first half, I think it was when Dylan Easton scored, I tweeted out saying that I think Dylan Easton's the best player outside the Scottish top flight. I sincerely believe that to be the case. He's such an exciting player to watch. He's spoken about in the past and just saying that if only he'd fucking screwed the nut when he was younger, he'd definitely be playing in the Premiership. And a number of people, I perhaps didn't word the tweet specifically because it was mostly Dundee United fans getting out saying, I think Erling Haaland and Kylian Mbappe might have something to say about that.
Well, I mean, they're right enough.
Yeah, they are right enough. But
that's not what you meant.
That's not what I meant. Obviously, like in Scotland, outside the Premiership. And then, obviously, Dundee United fans saying, like, is he? Like, obviously, they've got some... I'm trying to think of a Dundee United player who's better than Dylan Easton.
Louis Moult.
Come on. That's a boring answer. That's a boring answer. Anyway, just another example of Dundee United fans getting on my case. I'd love to go one week without a Dundee United fan trying to body me.
I was watching the Courier podcast from this week watching it.
God, is that the one
on YouTube?
Is that the one with Jim Spence on it?
Yes, he was really having struggles with his headset.
Oh right, I thought you were going to say his breathing.
I couldn't work out. I can only put it into how much hair he has. Like it wouldn't sit on his head. It kept kind of slipping back, and he was trying to fix it. It literally went on for the first 10 minutes of the podcast. Then that was enough, to be honest.
Is he good to listen to on these podcasts? I have heard that he just reads out the league tables. He just takes, like, somebody will talk about Forfar are doing well, and he just reads out the league table. Yeah, they've won their last 2 games, something like that, and that's him passing off. That's just sort of giving a cursory glance to the lower leagues.
I mean, he didn't do that in the first 10 minutes, but it wasn't overly insightful, I suppose.
Did he talk about the police?
No, but again, it was a long podcast. I only listened to about the first 10, 15 minutes. I might go back to it.
Maybe the final 15 minutes he starts talking about the Alba party or something like that. Go on his Twitter page. I occasionally still go on his Twitter page just for a look, and it's just the guys like, have a day off. You know, it's a beautiful world out there. Go and enjoy yourself. But we're not here to talk
and cut your hair.
cut your hair, you hippie. We're not here to talk about Jim Spence, Dundee United, or Raith Rovers. No. We're going to the south side of Glasgow, and we are going to be talking about Queen's Park, who were demolished 4-1 by Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Despite taking the lead from Jack Turner, very well taken goal, they folded, especially in the second half. And a goal from Max Anderson, Nicola Udger, David Witherspoon, and a Billy Mackay penalty gave it Duncan Ferguson's side a thoroughly deserved win. Now, just a wee bit of background here. Queen's Park now have, after, I think that with Greenock Morton having won 2 games in the bounce, they have slipped down into 9th place. And something that I think we can pretty much skip over talking about Cali Thistle here, because they have played the game since. They're doing fine, etc. But Queen's Park really are the much more interesting team. We briefly touched on them on our Patreon podcast last week. But the club are a shambles at the moment. It's been 4 months, almost 4 months since they last won a match in the league. They're just 2 points off the foot of the table. And then their director of football, Marion Bucher, whom so much stock had been invested, he joined Ajax at the end of November. The head coach, Robin Velman, departed on Saturday following that loss to Cali Thistle. There was a statement on the website, just reduced to 2 sentences. No best wishes or good luck. And then on top of that, Gardner Spears, who's the head of the academy, he's left too. So what on earth, Sean, is going on with Queen's Park? Because, they're medium, they're short, they're medium, and long-term future, very, very unclear at the moment.
See, just in terms of this game, so purely in terms of that 90 minutes, so this kind of horrific run has been going on for 4 months now. But see, even if this performance had come in October, for example, I think it was so inept and so bad that there would have been calls for Velman's head at that point, because it was so disastrously terrible. But to come at the end of a 4-month run, bear in mind the last league win was the August the 19th or something.
Arbroath, like that. Yeah, beat Arbroath 1-0.
It certainly felt like kind of end of days, I suppose. But in terms of on the park, it feels like I know that there's words like banded about like project or whatever. Like a first team cannot be a project. You can have a side project. The first team cannot be a project. But it kind of feels like that's what it is right now. But the performance, both kind of collectively and individually, was as bad as Queen's Park have played this season. And watching it back, I can see exactly why Veldman was. Whether it was by his own admission, whether he decided to kind of call it a day, whether he was relieved of his position, like, we don't know, because the communication with Queen's Park is so bad. But this was probably the worst performance of the season.
Yeah, a lot to pick up from what you said there. In terms of Robin Velman walking away, he signed a 3-year contract, I think it was in the summer. Not sure if you would walk away from a 3-year contract, but certainly it's just him on the sidelines wearing a pair of jeans, very unbecoming.
Claude
Anelka wore jeans. There you go.
A manager cannot wear jeans. A manager cannot wear jeans. It's as simple as that.
I remember my dad saying to me once, you can never trust a man who doesn't wear a belt. And when he saw Craig White pitch up at Ibrox without wearing a belt, he thought, the alarm bell's ringing, and he was right.
Was your dad outside at the time?
My dad's John Brown. That's how I know. Dad was outside looking, wondering where the deeds are. But no, in terms of, I bring it back from the southwest of Glasgow to directly to the south side of Glasgow. I think that there was. I think you saw some good parts about Queen's Park in this performance, but you also saw them at their very worst. And I think this was it. When I say their very worst, this was particularly in the second half an absolutely disastrous performance. They scored a really well worked goal through Jack Turner midway through the first half, and actually, I think that goal, I think that crystallises what Queen's Park want to be, where the ball is taken out from back. It starts off with Callum Ferry at the back, rolling it out to, I think it's Tommy Robson at left back, and there's 8 passes before the ball's worked into Jack Turner, who gets a bit of luck with Udser sort of like the ball landing at his feet and him able to score. But nevertheless, very, very well worked from the goalkeeper, all the way through the middle, out to the right, and the ball chucked in. Great goal. But, and this is perhaps a lot more alarming, is that you saw Queen's Park at their very worst, where run ragged, lack of collective responsibility, lack of individual responsibility, players who didn't really seem to know what they were doing, very, very soft-centred, very, very easy to play against. And I honestly don't think that Cally Thistle, certainly in that second half, will have an easier half of football to play this season, because certainly all 3 goals in that half, and maybe you could even, if you want to be a bit crueler, you could say Max Anderson's goal, the equaliser, that could have been prevented, but all those goals could have been stopped, and they weren't. And that's and we can say it comes down to like a bad day at the office, but under Veldman, that's 4 months of having bad days at the office.
Aye, agreed. And I also agree with what you say about the second half in terms of the defending collectively and individually, but in terms of the equaliser, they went in at half-time 1-0. But Lewis Reed was like rolled far too easily, kind of out wide for the cross that came in for the equaliser, and that was a recurring theme.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, it sounds, because he's like a 19-year-old academy graduate, and he'll have a lot of learning to do. But I've got to say that was a really, really dismal performance from Lewis. I think directly responsible for 2 of the goals, and just looked shell shock playing at sort of like left centre back there. Exposed a lot of time. I don't think Robson necessarily gave him a lot of help, but nevertheless, it was just coming up against someone like David Wotherspoon, Nathan Shaw, guys like that, guys who are like powerful, direct runners. In Wotherspoon's case, very, very tricky, very unpredictable. He was left badly exposed and left wanting there.
And that, I suppose that kind of ultimately kind of burrows down into what Queen's Park issues are this season. So they don't really have an issue scoring goals. Like, they score plenty of goals, or a kind of mid-table in terms of scoring goals. But in terms of trying to keep it out, it's been a disaster. Kind of worst in the division. And then you look at the fact that their starting lineup on Saturday had Tommy Robson, I think Lewis Reed. So Tommy Robson was the only one that had any experience. I think Lewis Reed's 19. Alex Bannon, his kind of centre-half partner, might have been 20. Ben McPherson was 19. And you think, where would Queen's Park be if they'd kept Lee Kildee, for example, and then brought in somebody who had a wee bit of experience at right back, and then even somebody in front of them to protect them that again had a wee bit of experience? Because the thing is, in terms of whatever level of football you're at, whether it's the Scottish Premiership or League Two or whatever, you'll bring through young players. Each season you'll bring through young players, and you might bring through a handful. You might bring through 1, 2, 3, maybe every couple of seasons you'll bring through young players. And you know from experience, exactly the same as I do, that one of 3 things will happen. These young players will either progress and move upward through the pyramid, they will find their feet and be perfectly capable at the level that you've brought them in at, or they will move down and they won't be quite good enough. But that's fine if you're only bringing through 1, 2, 3 and a squad of experienced players. But the fact that Queen's Park have kind of based the majority of their squad on young players who we don't really know how good they are. Like, again, the majority of them might be good in 2 or 3 years. But what I would say is almost all of them at this moment in time are not good enough for the Championship. And I just feel like even in the summer, it felt like a very high-risk manoeuvre. And maybe that wasn't Robin Velman's fault, I don't know. And maybe maybe if it had a more experienced squad and a better squad, then they might have been mid-table. I don't think he's getting the most out of them, or he didn't get the most out of them. That's what I would say. But in terms of a squad building exercise, like the summer was where they made their ultimate mistake, and I don't think this squad is good enough at all at this moment in time.
No, I wrote that down there. I think that Robin Veldman, he's played his hand very badly, but he was dealt a very weak hand. I'm going to assume it's Marian Bucher that was responsible for signing these players. In fact, I'm sure it was, because before Veldman actually came into the club, any time Queen's Park announced a signing, it was Marian Bucher that was posing for them with photographs of the players and their parents and their families and so on. And I'm sure even after Veldman came in, it was still Bucher that was posing with them. So you've got to assume that Bucher was the one who's responsible for putting the squad together. The fact that Robin Veldman's title is head coach kind of gives an indication as to where the responsibility lies for recruitment. But even so, just you can talk about like having young and inexperienced players, but I don't think you'll see as poor a goal conceded. Well, maybe you will actually, because we're going to talk about some poor goals that are conceded actually this season. But in terms of like David Wotherspoon's goal, the third goal, like Wotherspoon, I saw on social media, Wotherspoon was getting a great pop for that goal for his feet, to jink between the Queen's Park players and create a space for himself to get a shot. And when you think of it from that perspective, it's a very well taken goal. But the defend, nobody moved. It was like a man trying to get out of the way of a puddle when he's walking down the street, and he sort of tiptoes his way round it. It's just, they were so bad. Like, so bad. And I don't know what that speaks about, if that's just like, if the players aren't trying. I would never think that's the case. I think it's only in the rarest of circumstances that players don't try. But it just looked like, why are you allowing this guy to waltz and slalom and sashay his way through the penalty box? I mean, surely as a manager, you're not going to tell your players don't get stuck in these circumstances. It was such a bad goal to lose. Good from Wotherspoon's part, but just dreadful from Queen's Park's perspective.
No, you're right, because I think he swivelled away from Alex Bannon. I think it was. I could be wrong. But then Lewis Reed, like, he doesn't really react at all. He kind of swivels past him to get his shot away. And you're right. See, in terms of things like I kind of bristle at comments like, the players have chucked it, or the other team just wanted it more. Like, I really, I find those comments like that, I really disagree with them, because I often think it's to do with a lack of confidence, or it's to do with maybe the other team's just better and things like that. However, see if a Queen's Park fan had an opinion that the players had chucked it, and then I wanted to make a kind of counter argument, but then they showed me those highlights, I would struggle to make one. And that's why it really felt like a kind of end of days, I suppose, for Veldman on Saturday. It was inept.
Even in the first half, the second half was as bad as it was because they conceded 3 goals. But in the second half, there was a bit where Udster makes a run forward. He makes a sort of run for the middle of the park, and just no one follows him. And there's Tommy Robson pointing to Lewis Reed. I had to watch it back a couple of times in the Queen's Park highlights, pointing to Lewis Reed is almost to say, like, oh, I'm passing one to you need to deal with him. And by that point, Udger's going full pelt. It's very difficult for Reed to turn and try and maintain pace with him. And I think that Udger, what did I see? What did he do there? Yeah, he should have done better with his finish. I think he put the ball wide, but no one really like tracks the run, and that's the sort of that's just like what I'm saying there about the lack of responsibility. No one just doing your job properly, getting out there and stopping crosses and just being there and being switched on and being aware. I think the point is sorry, you go.
The only thing I was going to say in terms of to totally agree with you, see in terms of lack of responsibility, see the second goal. So the goal that Osjo scored from the corner to put Inverness 2-1 up. Like, he scored from whatever it was, like 4 yards out, from a decent delivery from the corner kick. There were 10 Queen's Park players in the 6-yard box, and nobody took responsibility at all. Almost like nobody really done anything. And I don't know if it was just
he didn't even need to jump. He did jump. But it was just sort of like rather than actually powering a header in.
Exactly. He rose higher than anybody else, but that's because nobody else jumped. And I don't know if it's because they don't care? Is it because they don't try? I don't believe that. Maybe it was because there's so many Queen's Park players in the 6-yard box that they don't know who's responsible for what. I don't know, but it summed up everything about the performance.
I think that we're coming to the stage, so we've got a couple of weeks until the January transfer window opens, and the big thing is that, right, I mean, Queen's Park, for instance, we're recording this podcast on a Wednesday night, so something might have gone out, but while we're recording or whatever, we've got this game at the weekend against Greenock Morton. It's a massive game because Morton have overtaken them in the table. Those back-to-back wins over Arbroath and Cally Thistle, and the one against ICT on the Tuesday night. Who's taking the team? Who's taking the team for this one?
Nobody knows, and that's the thing. But that doesn't surprise me that nobody knows, because as we've said for years now, as much as Queen's Park have progressed on the park, off the park, they're hopeless. And if I was a Queen's Park fan, that's probably what would disappoint me the most. And I don't know what's happening, and I don't need to know every minute detail of what's going on. But like nobody knows who's taking the team. Like you mentioned the statement that went out on Saturday night. It was 2 sentences. Again, it's not necessarily a big thing, but thanking Veldman or giving some indication of what was happening in this week coming, it's hopeless. But then it's not surprising, because their communication and off-field activities for whatever it is, 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, maybe since they've gone professional.
It's been rubbish.
Which is that's the irony, isn't it? That since they've gone professional, the communication's been really, really poor. We don't know if Marion Bucher's going to be replaced. Not sure who's calling the shots. You're going to assume Leanne Dempster, given her seniority within the club. But when's the last time you heard anything from Leanne Dempster? It might have been in that game against, was it when she appeared on BBC Scotland?
Dergy.
Against Dergy, she was at half-time. Yeah. And she said,
exactly.
They asked her, what happens if Queen's Park get promoted? We'll deal with it if it comes. Great. That's exactly, that's exactly what we're looking at. That'll really put us at ease.
But even things like, so I've read this week that there is a committee in charge of Queen's Park. But I'm not entirely sure I knew that. So there's a committee either making decisions or in charge of Queen's Park, but then what about Leanne Dempster? What about Willie Hockey? I don't... The more I kind of read about Queen's Park, or the more I learn about Queen's Park, probably the less I understand about them. Mm-hmm. They're a really, really strange club that need a wee bit more transparency, certainly from their fans' perspective.
Definitely, because there's the question. I think we'll talk about a new manager, but is Marion Bucher going to be replaced? Do you want to maintain this director of football, this continental model? Personally, I think they should maintain it. I know it's a bit of a bump in the road at the moment. It needs to be modified, of course. You can't just sign 19-year-olds and expect the team to gel immediately. You've got to sign. You're going to have to sign. So I think, guys, you'll probably have to sign a Robbie Muirhead, for instance. You're going to have to sign someone who's played for Dundee last season, who's in their 30s. Because it's all very well having these really good young players, and there are some really good young players in this Queen's Park team. Like Jack Thompson's someone I think is really, really good. He was excellent when I went to see him against Hamilton Accies. That array of attackers are really good players. But I mean, it's to put them in with so many guys who are just learning their trade, learning how to bounce back from defeat, learning how to the dark arts of the game and so on, game management, all that. It doesn't feel like it's a conducive environment for these young players to learn from. I would like to see them though maintain it, but just have a wee bit more pragmatism with it. And that's the thing. I mean, if they do want to deviate, I mean, Willie Haughey certainly got the resources to it. I saw somebody on Pie and Bovril refer to Queen's Park as Gretna 2.0, and a Queen's Park fan came back and said it's not Queen's Park 2.0. If we wanted to mimic what Gretna did, we have got the resources, demonstrably wealthy resources. If you wanted to do that, we could have a team that's in the top 6 in the Premiership.
So interestingly on that, I find this quite confusing about Queen's Park. I mean, there's so many confusing aspects about the club. If you'd looked a little bit down in League 2, I'd said that was an expensively assembled squad for League 2. Likewise, I'd have said the same for League 1 when they managed to get promoted from that.
But this time around,
this doesn't feel like an expensively assembled squad. Even last season, you want to go back to last season? Dundee would have had the biggest budget in the league. Queen's Park might have been second. I don't know. This won't be the second biggest budget in the Championship. No chance. Almost an entire squad of very young players, teenagers, early 20s, they won't be on a lot of money. So is it because they still are a club that have money available, but they've decided to go down a slightly different route, which makes sense, to be fair? So in terms of, do they have the funds to go out in January? I don't know. Do they have the funds to bring in a good manager? I don't know. They are just a curious football team that I kind of got my head around.
I'm going to assume that it's Paul Nuyten. I don't think I've pronounced that properly. I don't think I've pronounced any names I've said properly. A big massive apologies to Udster, Nikolai Udster at Cali. That's probably not how you pronounce his name. I think it's Paul Nuyten who will be taking charge of this game against Great Morton at the weekend. But even if we don't know what's happened with Bucher, Gardner Spears, who we mentioned at his head of academy, his position needs to be filled. The manager, are they? Because surely, if you're going to appoint a manager, you need to appoint the director of football in the first instance, and then allow him to select the manager. But just saying is that's, I don't know names of directors of football, but I do know some of the names that have been linked to the Queen's Park job: Tam Courts, Scott Brown, Charlie Mulgrew, John Hughes, Malky Mackay. Any of them sort of tickle your fancy?
If I was a Queen's Park fan, I would want Tam Courts, I think. Because again, it's quite weird because you can probably throw 20 names at this position and say, under normal circumstances, if it was a normal club, you'd say, right, well, those 10, no chance we're getting them. But because we don't know what Queen's Park's budget is or what they're looking for exactly, then 20 might be potential. I would say Tam Courts would probably be their best bet, I think, because he has previous at working at the full-time level and kind of lower level with kind of younger players especially. So I think Tam Courts would be a decent fit. But bear in mind, this is Queen's Park. I could see it being Malky Mackay. I believe his father is involved in some capacity at Queen's Park, albeit I think a minor capacity, which might rule him out. But it's Queen's Park, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's just a confusing situation as always. It's the fans that the one you feel sorry for, because when there's that absence of communication, that absence of information, then it's just like rumour and gossip and innuendo that fills the spaces, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make sense. We're reading the stuff on social media. We're the ones going in pie and bottle, trying to pick through it, watching the highlights, watching the post-match interviews. But there's just a complete void, and so no one knows what they're trying to do. I think what they need to do is have publish a video on their YouTube channel where it's like Dempster sitting down and is just going through like a half-hour interview where he's just answering questions about what this club is, what happened with Bucher, what happened with Veldman, what's happening with the future, what is the point of this club? Because if you said, Sean, being a development club is one thing, being a club where you bring through young players is one thing. That's a good thing. That's an admirable thing. That's an attractive thing. But ultimately, you still have to win games. What does it say for Queen's Park? Like, the young guys completed loads of passes, but we still lost 4-0. It's a good experience for them. Of course, it's a good experience for them. But ultimately, you still need to. You're a functioning football club. You still need to win games and be competitive and challenge and not get relegated. And I mean, that's 4 points from the last 11 matches. That's terrible form. I mean, that might be the worst in the division in that period of time. Maybe Arbroath are sort of there, but shocking and you really wonder what happens, and we'll have to keep on wondering because we're probably not going to find out or be told.
But I am looking forward to them appointing John Hughes.
Let's see. Do you think John Hughes is his after those spells at Raith and Dunfermline, particularly the spell at Dunfermline, do you think that's him finished? Or do you think he'll always be in the running for stuff?
There might be somebody along. Could one of the lowest full-time teams in Scotland appoint him? Maybe.
Just as well, Marvin Bartley won against Montrose at the weekend. Now, before we go, Sean, I know we started off the championship by talking about Raith Rovers, but I mean, I think we can't finish up without previewing the match against Dundee United on Saturday. This is at Tannadice, Dundee United, Raith Rovers, biggest game in the country taking place at the weekend. I don't care what's happening in the League Cup, don't care what's happening in League One. This is the biggest game that's taking place. How are you feeling about it? First of all, are you going to the match?
I am.
Brilliant.
to be fair, like we're recording this on a Wednesday, Raith Rovers play Raith Rovers play Arbroath tonight, so they could go to Tannadice, top of the league, or they could go second. They're taking a huge support. They've almost, as of the Wednesday, they've almost sold out the away stand at Tannadice. I am not saying that Raith Rovers would be favourites for that game, of course. However, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that Rovers do go there and win. Like they're very good. Certainly in terms of on the front foot, they are very, very good. I saw highlights of Dundee United Airdrie the weekend. I thought they were reasonably stodgy. Admittedly, I do think if Dundee United have a fully fit starting 11, it's better than ours, and they could get out of defence, which is certainly the weakest part of the team. However, I think it could be an excellent game, and I wouldn't say that Raith don't have a chance, put it that way.
I hope Raith Rovers win. I'm so excited. I think
so
I'm disappointed this game's actually not on the telly on the Friday night, because this would be an absolute corker. But not every game in Scotland that's broadcast can be a Raith Rovers game. That is deeply unfortunate. That is deeply unfortunate. But no, I hope you win. But we'll go. We've spent some time in Glasgow. That's Scotland's most populous city. We'll go to Scotland's capital city, and we'll talk about Edinburgh City. How many cities can you fit in one link? Well, there's 3 for you. But Edinburgh City, terrible. Citizens of the club experiencing serious financial difficulties and face an uncertain future. They lost 3-1 to Stirling Albion at the weekend, but that doesn't even really tell the full story. Despite Robbie Mann opening the scoring for Citizens midway through the first half, Robert Thompson, Jack Leach put the Beanos ahead before the interval, before Josh Cooper put the game beyond doubt just after the hour mark. Stirling Albion arrested a terrible run of 5 defeats with that win. They're in 7th. But it's Edinburgh, the much more interesting club to talk about. I've done a wee intro. I'll need to keep on going because I need to put this into context, Sean. I mean, we spoke about it on last week's Patreon. The Edinburgh players, they've not been paid for a number of weeks, and a large number of the squad didn't take part in this match. And there were rumours that some of them went out on the piss on a big weekend in Dublin instead. But Scott Mercer and Liam Fontaine as well, a couple of lone players, were the only recognisable names in the starting 11. The rest of the team was fleshed out with youngsters from the club's development squad. A good effort, but I think on the whole they were exposed. Lack of quality, lack of experience, that was exposed by Stirling Albion here.
Yeah, very much so. As much as Edinburgh's opening goal, because they went 1-0 up, might have been my favourite goal of the weekend.
Good goal.
As in, it was silly and a very good finish. So, like, Blair Curry had the ball in possession, hurled it out. Like, I don't know what he was aiming at. Like, there didn't seem to be any Stirling Albion player remotely near who he rolled it. He rolled it to Robbie Mann, but Robbie Mann still had a lot to do.
That's a great touch and finish, yeah. First
touch, like whatever it is, 30 yards for goal,
yep,
presumably. And the way, like, dinked it, perfectly paced, perfectly executed, right over Curry and into that. So that probably gave Edinburgh fans a false sense of hope. But I think what happened after that was what was going to happen to Edinburgh for the rest of the season. If they can make it out as a club, if they can make it on as a club, because Stirling ultimately saw this game out quite comfortably.
I think, though, you're saying the sort of thing that's going to happen for the rest of the season. You don't expect one of your most experienced defenders to try and dribble out from his own box and lose possession.
Right. No, there was no danger at all for Stirling Albion's equaliser. Like, Scott Mercer had the ball at the edge of the box. Like, presumably had all the options, whatever option a centre half needs when he's in possession of the football. He had all of them, but then gave it away to Robert Thompson, who had a decent finish beneath Andy McNeil. But then from that point onwards, like, Stirling were always going to win that game, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that we can talk about the goals if you want. There's a bit, I think it's a cross comes into the box. I think it's Adam Cann, number 3, sort of heads it back just to the edge of the area, and it falls at Jack Leach. That's bad enough, but no one closes Leach down. Yep. You know, it's actually a very, very well taken goal, but I mean, you can leave a player Jack Leach's quality the time to control and shoot. That's going to happen. And then they had the chance. Edinburgh had a really good chance to equalise. I think it was Mahan again, actually. Really good piece of play in the middle of the park between Gwang Rad Peter. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. He feeds Kieran Offord, and it's a really, really nice reverse ball, and he really should have scored, hit it off Blair Curry's legs. And then Josh Cooper, who'd come on as a sub 1 minute later, standing over a free kick, puts it in the back of the net. I think it was supposed to be a cross. I think that he's probably a bit surprised, mishit it a wee bit, but certainly deceived Andy Neil and went into the net. And then I suppose that Carrick missed a penalty late on. McNeil did well to save it. But I think it was ultimately, despite the fact that Michael Mackindo in his post-match interview, full of praise for his young players, as he should be, given the circumstances, just pretty straightforward for Stirling Albion at the end.
And I was starting to lean towards Edinburgh, maybe starting to stay up.
I actually think if this game had taken on Michael Mackindo in his post-match interview said that the team that he had picked, he had a team set out on Thursday to play on the Saturday, and that all changed with I think it was 8 players who chose or who were advised not to play or chose not to play or whatever. And that team changed. So I think that under normal circumstances, I'd have fancied Edinburgh for this one. But when you're having to play a gang of teenagers, Scott Mercer and Liam Fontaine, always going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the sort of quick scan at players I noticed that didn't play either from the Montrose game or maybe players that would have expected to play even if they didn't play in the Montrose game. So Innes Murray, Callum Crane, Ryan Shanley, Danny Handling,
he's
Robbie
away.
Leach.
Sorry to interrupt you. Danny Handling's already announced that he's away. I think he'll be the first of several.
No, I know that. So he's announced that he's away. Robbie Leach, Kyle Jacobs, Lee Hamilton, Lewis Spence, Russell McLean. Admittedly, I don't know if Russell McLean would have the biggest impact on not being involved at Edinburgh anymore. But regardless, there's a lot of players in there that would make a massive difference in terms of Edinburgh staying up.
Yeah.
And again, similar to what we've spoken about Queen's Park, that if I was an Edinburgh fan, I'd be raging at the fact that we are relying on the Sun to give us an update. Or Danny Handling's Twitter.
Totally. You know, it's almost like having a convicted paedophile as an uncle, where you don't mention him at all. It's just it's something that's there, but you don't talk about, because there's no mention of it on the club's website, no mention of it on the Edinburgh City's social media account. They don't discuss it directly. Again, going by Michael Mackindo's post-match interview, the interviewer says to him, it's been a tough week. Michael Mackindo doesn't even explain what it is. He says he's going to sit down with the board and all that and find out what's going on. And it really feels like, everyone knows what's happening here, but no one's actually saying what it is.
Yeah, so we don't really get an expectation or an understanding of how bad is this. We know it's bad. The fact that potentially umpteen players have left the club, that doesn't bode well. But what kind of, where are we here? Are they going to make out the season? Can they potentially go into administration? Are they going to avoid administration? If it's administration, then presumably a points deduction. Michael Mackindo was talking about, he's spoken to wise old owls. I thought it was quite a funny quote on his interview. I thought generally his interview was quite good, but when he talked about wise old owls, I thought that was weird. And he was saying, it's now, they were telling me it's now impossible. If they get a points deduction, then yes, it is. It absolutely will be impossible.
As well, he said the players at the start of the week all came up to him for a cuddle. I doubt that very, very much. I've heard some stuff about Michael Mackindo's managerial style. He does not sound like the kind of person that you'd want to hug or be managed by generally. But Sean, especially
if you're a wallet in your back pocket.
Sean, I actually sat down with a pen and paper and made tally marks. How many times do you think he said Dave during this interview?
Now, I listened to the interview and it was only about 6-ish minutes.
6 minutes, 2 seconds. How many times do you think he said the word Dave?
12?
24. Seriously, sat down with a pen and paper, 24 Daves. That's 4 Daves a minute. That's value for money. That is value for money. If you don't believe me, go and watch it. Go and watch it and sit and count for yourself.
It was a lot of Daves. I didn't realise it was 24. But my goodness, fair play.
Yeah, I suppose that Mackindo is probably the I would say it's the most difficult challenge he's ever faced in football. I'm sure he's faced a lot more difficult stuff outside of the game. But he's got such a difficult task to try and keep this young team together, because I reckon for some of the young guys, I was taking a look at them, that some of them had made appearances in the League Cup and the Challenge Cup, like Adam Can, his first ever league appearances, Brodie Devine's first ever league appearance, Struan Mayer's first ever league appearance. Peter, he was a late sub in the 3-2 over Annan Athletics, so was Kai McNamara. Sakari Dublin Green, first ever senior appearance. And I suppose if you're young boys that are just thrust into it, and apparently the development squad's quite handy, this Edinburgh team, I think. Like, I think the excitement and the adrenaline will get you through. And they were competitive in the match, just not as good as Stirling. They were competitive in that match, but when it's like into the season, say it's like into February, for instance, and if there has been a points deduction, if the club do go into administration or whatever, what's the morale like? And will McIndoe be encouraged to stay? Because I'm not sure. It's such a difficult job that. What are you getting from this other than you get the chance to manage in the SPFL? But I feel really, really sorry for their supporters. There's one, Ali Moncrief, who spoke on the terrace. He certainly communicates well on Pie and Bovril. Feel sorry for the likes of him. You're getting more from him posting in Pie and Bovril than your official statements from the club. He's been at meetings and so on. He's done well to keep people updated. But we need to know. I say we, the greater we fans need to know what's going on with this football team. What's happening? Can the club be saved? Is there a financial package that can be put in place to rescue us? What's going to happen in the next couple of months? Are these players going to leave? Because if you were a team like, say, Kelty Hearts, for instance, off the top of my head, Kelty Hearts, or like Dumbarton, Stennismuir, Forfar, you'd be looking at some of these players and thinking, I definitely fancy them. These guys could come in and do a really, really good job for us. I think like Shanley, Ennis Murray, Lewis Spence, they will not be short of offers. What's happening? But what is going to happen to this football team in the short term?
And as much as McIndoe was talking about how proud he was of his team, such a young team, and applying themselves quite well and giving Stirling Albion a game, I actually think if Edinburgh had like, if they were thinking about surviving in this league, which obviously they are, they've probably needed to beat Stirling Albion. Like Stirling Albion were a team. If you look at that starting 11, Stirling Albion starting 11, that's probably arguably a League 2 starting 11, a good League 2 starting 11. Stirling Albion have had like a weird season that they haven't really strengthened their squad from winning League 2. And they were on a bad run, and if they wanted to catch somebody up, it was Stirling Albion. Now you're thinking to yourself, right, well, who are Edinburgh going to catch up? Is it Annan? Can they maybe finish 9th? I'm not so sure. And you're right, there would have been an adrenaline about Saturday, and that they're a young team that were giving it their all. They hadn't been in that position before, and maybe they would have given that extra 5% or whatever. Come to February, if we're still in the same position, you suspect they'll be losing 6-0, 7-0 to teams.
I wonder what McIndoe's team talk would have been going into it. He said, everyone thinks you guys are going to lose. Everyone knows what's going here. Everyone thinks you guys are going to lose. Prove that you're good players and you're not going to lose. And that only got them so far. I mean, I think he said in his post-match interview the young players were gassing at the end after about half an hour. Imagine that, half an hour in. That's me, Gaffer. I'm done. After an hour, and said they need to be taken off. But what happens like that? Everyone thinks we're going to lose here. That's only going to get you so far. So it's very, very difficult job. But I think that in the circumstances, like flipping it around, I'm not sure if there's anything else to be said about Edinburgh. I mean, they're still at a point behind Annan, Annan are not in good form at the moment as well. So in the meantime, they can still, I think they'll be looking to finish in 9th. I think we said that at the beginning of the season, it's going to be a straight shout between them two, between 9th and 10th. But if you want to talk about Stirling Albion, I think that they really, really needed to win. They really, really needed to win, because I've suspected for a couple of weeks now, that they are going to be suckered in and become a three-way battle at the bottom of the table between themselves, Edinburgh and Annan. Not sure that's going to be the case now, but I think it was a really important win. And all Edinburgh in this period were the perfect team for them to play against, just because they didn't have that experience and that know-how to play against. So Stirling, their defenders, big, strong boys, Jordan McGregor, Ross McGeechy, big, strong boys, slow, difficult to get around. you're playing against like young boys who can be pushed around, can't even win high balls. That's good. Midfield's slow and easy and quite easy to play against. I watched the highlights of their 2-0 defeat to Alloa Athletic. Alloa were miles better than them, passed right through them. But because in this match, these youngsters don't necessarily have the fitness to do that, that's why Stirling were able to take control. And up front, if you're playing like Scott Mercer does something like that, like when he tries to dribble out defence and lose possession, you're obviously going to score from it. But the fact is Fontaine and Mercer in the middle of the park and two teenagers playing at left back, Stirling Albion have got a good array of attacking options that can take advantage of that. So it was the ideal opposition for anyone, but especially for Stirling Albion because their deficiencies within their own squad weren't exploited because Edinburgh didn't have the personnel to exploit it, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, but what I would say is I don't know if Stirling Albion will get a great advantage from this game because I expect everybody to beat Edinburgh now.
I think so. I think with Edinburgh, I can see them being like Brecon City in the 17-18 season in the Championship. And I remember it got to the stage where, I think I've said this in a podcast previously, it was getting to the stage where Brecon were losing every week. And I'm sure managers' team talks at that time would have been, we are not going to be the side that loses to Brecon. And so subconsciously the players would try a little bit harder, even though the team are the worst in the division. You do not want to be the side that drops points to this Brecon team. People will be the same in this division when it comes to Edinburgh City. You do not want to be the side that loses to these 18-year-olds with double-barrel names. You know, this isn't going to happen here. So it's very, very difficult to see how they pull themselves out of it, or what happens with the club. The club need to acknowledge it in the first instance, because just like I say, just like skirting around it, and like even their tweet at full time saying, "Oh, the young players performed courageously" or whatever it was. If you didn't know, you'd be like, "Oh, why are they fielding young players?
Yeah.
What's the story here?" Because it's not being acknowledged.
They even seem to be, like, ever since the news emerged, like the main Edinburgh City Twitter feed is like retweeting things about the under-20s. But again, giving no information about the first team. It's a very strange set of circumstances.
Yeah, very strange set of circumstances. Yeah, so I think that's a big win for Stirling Albion, very important win for Stirling Albion. But Edinburgh City, I think they've got Queen of the South next as well. And this is Queen of the South. Maybe a couple of weeks ago you think they'd fancy it for them, but given the fact they're playing children and the fact that Marvin Bartley's side unexpectedly, completely out of nowhere, beat Montrose 4-1 at the weekend, you would imagine this is going to be a bit of a cakewalk for the Doonhamers. You'd imagine.
I think Queen of the South will win. And quite comfortably, yes.
Before we move away into our featured match in League 2, Sean, there's a big game taking place in League 1 this weekend where Hamilton Accies are taking on Falkirk, first versus second. It's only goal difference that separates the teams at the moment, despite the fact that Accies have played one game more. But instead of previewing this match, we'll talk about the match, but instead of immediately previewing the match, I think it's important to talk about the ticketing situation. I don't know if you've been keeping up to this. Like, it's physical tickets only. Hamilton Accies have sent 2,000 briefs to Falkirk, which can only be bought from the club shop, which is great if you're local or you are able to get through to Falkirk in time for it shutting at 7 o'clock in the evening. But not so great if you don't live in Falkirk or you are busy in the evening with other stuff. I mean, this was brought to my attention by a guy, Roman Bairn, on Pie and Bovril. He asked us to discuss it in View from the Terrace. Fortunately, View from the Terrace is taking its winter break. So I thought it'd be an interesting topic to discuss here. Why on earth in this day and age are you having to travel to the local club to buy physical tickets for this match?
I think it's banging order. And I know what you're saying in terms of it must be physical tickets only, but only if you're an away fan.
Yeah.
So Hamilton fans can buy them online via their fan base app, but Falkirk fans can't. Like, there was a really good example where there was a Falkirk fan who he stays close to Hamilton.
Yeah.
What he's saying is he'll have to drive to Falkirk during office hours, pick up a ticket so that he can go to a game that's whatever it is,
Just
5 or 10
down the road
minutes from his house. I just think it's treating fans very, very poorly. And listen, maybe there's a reason for it that I cannot get my head around or that I haven't thought of. I don't know. But in this day and age, we mentioned it a few times, but making it more difficult for fans to come to games is a strange and very backward way to approach it from a club's perspective.
I would say that in this day and age, why on earth are Hamilton not able to sell e-tickets to away fans? But then I remember last week you spoke about their podcasts and the stuff on their YouTube channel. So maybe it isn't strange at all. But I'm thinking like like earlier in the season I went to a game between the Spartans and Stennismuir through in Edinburgh. Now my season tickets on the Fanbase app, my Stenny season tickets on the Fanbase app, and the number of clubs that are supported by Fanbase. I went into that app and I got off the train at Edinburgh, took a walk into the north of the city. It was fine. It was a really nice day, so I didn't object to walking. It was like a 45-minute walk. And on the way there, bought the ticket for the game there. It took seconds, came off my bank card, and then was just able to get it scanned in. Easy. I didn't need to preemptively travel to Edinburgh to go back through to Edinburgh for the game. And it just sucks. It just sucks. And I hope the guy is able to go to the game and doesn't have to travel all the way to Falkirk to come back. I mean, it's Falkirk and Hamilton. It's not a massive difference, but it's not the point. It's massively inconvenient. What if you stayed in Manchester and you're a Falkirk fan that stayed in Manchester and wanted to go to the game? Shite.
It's in this day and age. Bear in mind we had the whole kind of COVID situation, where like most clubs, like I kind of felt like they all kind of
had to get on board.
Yeah, kind of had to give that whole kind of buying tickets online, and yet here we are where Hamilton are saying, "Oh no, you Falkirk fans, you can't buy tickets online." Very strange, and it feels bang out of order. And I'd like to think it isn't because they're wanting to be awkward. Like surely they're not being awkward because Hamilton presumably need as many fans as possible. Like any Scottish football club need as many fans as possible in the door on a Saturday, but. I mean, let's face it, they've presumably turned fans away, and that feels like a very odd thing to do.
I mean, this is the biggest game of the season as well. This is a huge game at the top of the table. Falkirk already have sold about 1,300 tickets. I was reading not far off that, and here we are on recording this on the Wednesday. You would like to think that that's going to be more by the end of the week, and they can sell at their allocation because, like Falkirk, that's something to their credit. They always have good supports. But why make it so difficult for them to get there? I don't know the logistics behind it. I don't know the thinking behind it. But why would you, when you know it's the biggest game of the season for Hamilton, it's a great opportunity to make money. Why would you not make it as easy as possible to make money for yourselves from a big travelling support?
Bear in mind, they're still trying to recoup that £1 million they lost to a Nigerian prince. Here's a perfect opportunity to bring another 10 grand or so back.
How do you think this game will go? I mean, the last encounter of the sides, that was billed as a blockbuster, and that brought new meanings to the word brutality.
It was terrible. I think this game will also be tentative. I think that Hamilton might sneak it. I think this might be Falkirk's first defeat of the season. Yeah, I think they might win maybe 2-1.
Right, wow. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think like with Aki's, I don't necessarily trust the clubs. I always think that they've got some sort of boob within them. But I trust Falkirk slightly more than I trust Hamilton. Not 100% trust, but I trust them more than Hamilton.
And listen, that makes a lot of sense. However, I just think that with home advantage and Hamilton maybe having to go for it to a degree, or maybe having to take the handbrake off to a degree because although they're still top, Falkirk have a game in hand and they're level on points. I still have a sneaky suspicion that Hamilton will win it.
What letter of the alphabet does Falkirk begin with?
F.
And what comes before E? Oh, I fucked it. Just forget it. I was trying to do a link there. I thought you would say what letter comes before F? E. Yes. That's the name of that's what these two teams both begin with in League Two. Fuck, I've absolutely ruined it. Completely ruined it.
That was really good. That's a really good link.
That
really good link. I hope we get a live show soon.
Oh my goodness! Just me and you misreading things at each other, calling us names, and you know what happens? That's what will get the biggest pop in the night. We refer to ourselves as some sort of like these vile prisoners and get a laugh, and everyone goes home happy. What do you think of Telfer and Sean? So well, Telfer mispronounced all this stuff, but that intro at the start, by the way, hilarious, absolutely hilarious. We're going into League Two. We're talking about East Fife and Elgin City. They played each other at Bayview. East Fife pumped them 4-0. Brogan Walls got 2. Nathan Austin got 1. Scott Shepherd added one to make it 4. Certainly not the way that Alan Hill, brackets left, would have wanted to kick off his career with Elgin City. Thank you. East Fife are in 6th place amongst that throng of teams in mid-table. Elgin still 9th place, but because of Clyde's draw with Stranraer, that gap between the sides is now just 4 points. Sean, thoughts on East Fife 4, Elgin City 0?
My thoughts are that, again, this is a game where absolutely disastrous defending was on show for at least 2 of Elgin's goals, maybe more. But they were, I mean, if Alan Hale wasn't aware of the size of the task facing him...
Give him his proper name.
What's his name?
Alan Hale, brackets left. That's his proper name.
I thought it was maybe Mick Hale. I was like, I think that's a goalkeeper. Yes, if Alan Hale, brackets left, doesn't know the size of the task facing him, then he knows now. Because bear in mind, like East Fife have been pretty poor. And although on the day, they looked pretty decent, they looked like the team that I expected them to be this season. I still don't know if that's because they were good or just that Elgin were bad. And my goodness, Elgin looked really bad.
But if you want to know what sums up Elgin City's performance this match, like watch about the first minute of the highlights. The bit with these 5 TV commentator, I think it's Dan Harvey, gets the ball. Harvey, he's got a bit of time here, and toe pokes the ball out for a goal kick. Well, I'm not entirely sure what he was trying there. That pretty much sums up the game. Yeah, I think that East Fife's big problem is that it's all very well that their results against the sides beneath them recently have been really impressive. They've beaten Stranraer 4-0, beaten Clyde 4-0, beaten Elgin City 4-0, but they've lost to Dumbarton, they've lost to Sennismuir, they've lost to Peterhead, and I think that's why they're going to be in mid-table, because they're not good enough to properly get at the sides above them. Teams that are organised, who'd have thought it? Teams that are organised, teams that are a wee bit physical, whereas teams that are just like all the goals here, maybe other than Walls' second goal, I thought all the goals here were really, really poor. Elgin offered very little. Alan Fleming I think he juggled that one, kind of mishandled one ball into his box, but that was it. I mean, that was a mild moment of peril. Elgin offered nothing in this game, and it allowed East Fife, that based on certainly their attacking highlights, looked really, really good. I thought Shepherd, I was going to call him Tony Schiavone, Ryan Schiavone. Tony Schiavone is the former WCW commentator. Ryan Schiavone, Austin, he's in a bit of a hot streak at the moment. Brogan Walls obviously played very well. They all impressed during this match, but it was all pretty easy for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 3 of the 4 goals. So, like the first goal was like a kind of long ball forward. Yeah, and you would think, well, maybe Tom McHale, the Elgin goalkeeper, would deal with it. He kind of made a bit of stramash, didn't connect to it. He kind of put Shepherd off, I suppose.
Shepherd did really well. Shepherd really good balance here to pop the ball off to Walls.
But then Walls had a really good finish I mean, it was an empty net, but he still had a wee bit to do.
It's like, I was thinking, you don't see, I think there's something quite exciting about seeing Route 1 goals. You don't see a lot of them these days. So when you see like a big ball pumped up to a big striker who flicks it on and someone's running off his shoulder, really, really good goals, really enjoyable goals, just because you don't see them as often.
What about terrible defending from corners? Do you enjoy that?
Fucking
because the second goal would have delighted you if you did.
See this one short. I counted. So as the ball is put in to the near post, 4 Elgin players all go for the same ball.
They all run to the goal line. It was all very weird because bear in mind you have so Nathan Austin. So he gets the kind of final finish. The commentator says this is his 12th goal for East Fife against Elgin. But when the corner's taken, he is pretty much surrounded by Elgin players. As soon as the corner's taken, they all
run away from him.
It's like they're all attracted to the goal line. So suddenly he is 8 yards out and bags of space. And yes, his finish is fair enough. But he has so much time to do it. He wants to do it. And then I suppose is it the 4th goal that kind of sums Elgin up? My goodness.
It's horrendous. I mean, it's like Tom McHale passes the ball to Ross Draper. And Ross Draper's got players around him that are trying to make hangles for him. But instead, he ignores the players in front of him. And he tries to almost sweep the ball with outside of his foot back to McHale. Do you know, he tries to drag his foot and just completely fluffs it. It just completely fluffs it. Not enough power. And there's Scott Shepherd. Great anticipation from Shepherd to get in and nip round him and score. But just really bad. That's your most senior player. That's the guy who used to manage the team that is doing that. And there's a funny bit. I don't know if you noticed it. he sort of turns to Owen Cairns, who's sort of playing on the left, and he turns to like point at him as if to have a go at him and just gives up. Like gives up mid-point. He turns to point, gives up.
I mean, I didn't see a lot from Elgin. See, based on this performance and the fact that they. Now, to be fair, I don't know a lot about Alan Hale, pictured left. He could be great. He could be. I mean, he could have a lot about him. He could have a lot of contacts. He could be able to bring some of the better players from the Highland League to Elgin. I don't really know. But based on this, and based on Ian McCall being appointed as the Clyde manager, Clyde have a difficult fixture list coming up before the January transfer window opens. I still kind of think that Clyde have a better chance of getting out of this based on A, their form, and B, who they've appointed as managers.
I think so. I think so. Watching this, I'm actually surprised. I've mentioned it before. Clyde, their second half performance against Stennismuir was really, really good. You know, they actually could have won that match at the end. And having seen Clyde in the flesh, and then subsequently watching Elgin's highlights, I'm astonished that they came into this game with a 5-point gap between them.
Yep,
truly am, because they were terrible in this, and they've got a really, really tough run of fixtures between now and the end of the year. They're playing the Spartans on Saturday, then Stenhousemuir, and then Peterhead. There's three of the teams that are in the top four. I would be surprised if they're able to get any points between now and the end of the season.
And I suppose Hale, pictured left, he's only had a couple of training sessions with Elgin, so perhaps he's still getting to learn the team and the squad and what he has to work with. But regardless, listen, I don't know a lot about him, but I still fancy Elgin for 10th based on the appointment and Saturday. Because bear in mind as well, yes, I fancy these five to be at the top end of the table. These five's been really struggling. I actually thought to myself that if they got a new manager bounce, as much as a cliche and a potentially a kind of misnomer, I still thought Elgin might have got something from this game. And presumably, as a new manager, he would have maybe identified as it getting something from the game. But my goodness, they're miles away for getting anything from it.
Yeah, I think it's East Fife are. I think I'm not going to speak for supporters, but having read the stuff on Pie and Bovril, seen the stuff on social media, I'm not sure if fans are kind of have losing faith in Greg McDonald. This season hasn't really gone as they expected. Austin, yes, he's hit a bit of a hot streak. I think more was expected from him early in the season. You're kind of looking for Jack Healy, Brogan Walls to reprise their performances last season. Walls obviously played very well here. Healy been quite quiet. You've not really heard or read much about him. And going back to the point I made earlier, I think they are going to finish in mid-table now, because you can beat the teams beneath you. That's class. But I just don't see them having enough to trouble the sides that are just better organised and just physically stronger than them.
I agree, but to be fair, I don't know if they will finish below any teams that actually, now that we look at the kind of strengths and weaknesses of each squad, East Fife might finish where they should do.
I think they'll finish
fifth or sixth. Let's say they finish fifth or sixth, for example, then I would imagine the five teams that finish above them, you would say, actually, fair enough. Aye. So as much as East Fife fans might be disappointed at that, and to be fair, we spoke at the start of the season about how we fancied them to be in the top four. Actually, now, with the benefit of hindsight, I'm not so sure. So is Greg McDonald doing a poor job based on that? Difficult to say. East Fife fans are far better positioned than me to talk about that, I suppose.
I suppose that if you lose to it's sort of things like you lose to Dunbar United, for instance, in the Scottish Cup,
of course
that's going to count against you. And not to I try to avoid talking about Stennismuir in this one, but Stennismuir lost in that round as well. Stennismuir have lost 6 games. Stennismuir have won 6 games in a row. So that defeat to Brora, nobody cares about it anymore. That is so far in the rear view mirror. Now Stenny are looking to try and win the division, whereas East Fife, because that I think they lost in consecutive weeks to Peterhead and to Dumbarton. Not great results, but that loss against in the Scottish Cup, that's still hanging over you.
No, totally. But I suppose what I would say is, even if they brought in the best possible manager they could, and listen, I'm not trying advocating for McDonald saving his job. I'm not entirely sure he's in the realm of having to lose it, because based on the squad they have, I now don't know if they do have a kind of top 4 squad. Whereas at the start of the season, I thought maybe they did. I'm not so sure anymore. They could bring somebody else in. I'm sure they could bring somebody else in that could incrementally make them better. But whether that's worth it, I don't know.
Imagine they brought in Robin Veldman. That'd be weird.
They finished 10th.
Robin Veldman continuing his good work, and I was saying in Scotland, just in management in general. Listen, sometimes you just know cut out for yourself. Ross Draper had the good grace to realise this. Just say, lads, this isn't working for me. I can't give you it anymore. But I suppose that's a decent time to wrap things up. That's 70 minutes of conversation. That's decent.
Yeah, that almost feels short and sweet for us.
Yes, but no, that's good. Keep it. Always leave them wanting more. I think that's a good mantra. Yeah, I was going to make a joke about love making there, but you need to make love first before you can actually crack jokes about it. So we will leave it at that. Sean and I are going off to record a bonus podcast. We are going to be looking at a couple of teams around the lower leagues and talking about one position they need to strengthen in the January transfer window.
Is it positions? Because I'll be honest, I don't have any serious ones, and it's just kind of piss-taking ones.
All right, brilliant. Well, tune in to where Sean and I are recording 2 very different podcasts at the same time. It might be fun, but it probably won't. But nevertheless, spend £2 if you want to hear that. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. I always enjoy talking Sean about football. And if you're going to a game this weekend, please enjoy yourself, but you have to do so respectfully. Can't really ask any more than that. Enjoy your football. Do so respectfully. Thank you. Take care. Good night.